Hi guys, let's talk a bit about extreme metal vocals today. I'm gonna give you my 10 best extreme metal vocal tips. I know there are plenty of videos out about this topic, but I figured it would be fun to do my take on it. I won't talk that much about vocal technique or not harming your voice, simply because I'm not really an expert about that. It's gonna be more about how to progress as a growler and how to find your own voice. Also, I want to do a shout out to Tiago from Ashes of Life for inspiring me to do this video. Let's go to the tips. My first tip is to read and watch things about singing technique and apply it to your voice. There is so much good content out there on the web on how to do extreme vocals without harming your voice. You can also ask the content creators for advice. Google your specific question, I can almost guarantee that someone will have an answer to it. There are vocal coaches out there are YouTubers out there. All of them have answers to these more specific questions. The second tip is to explore different pitches and styles. People's voices are really different, and extreme metal vocals rarely coincide with the actual speaking voice. I've heard people with a really high speaking voice that has a really brutal low growl, and also vice versa. This means you have to try out different pitches and different styles to find your comfortable personal tone. Don't get stuck doing that one style you like musically. I know it's really tempting to try and sound exactly like Mikael Åkerfeldt or Corpse Grinder or Tommy Johnson from Amorphis. The problem is you will become less unique. It also might be something that will harm your voice in the end when you're not doing your natural thing. Also, you likely won't get all you can out of your voice. But how to avoid this? Well, follow the previous tip. Really do explore different pitches and styles. It took me a long time before I tried out high-pitched vocals or black metal vocals and realized it worked. I always wanted to push my voice lower when it wasn't really a natural thing for me. So it's a really important tip, and it's good to get on that early on, before you start developing your voice and becoming serious about it. A thing that you should try to do early on is teaching yourself what feels right and wrong. There's a lot of adrenaline, anger and power in extreme metal vocals, and sometimes you don't really notice when you're straining your voice until it's already done. Know when it starts hurting and know when you get hoarse and stuff like that already in the beginning. This is something you learn over time, but it can be a pretty expensive lesson. My voice has been out for weeks when I was really young, and there is no point to doing that. If you really learn the signs, you can just stop singing the wrong way pretty early. And the main pointers and signs are pretty basic. It's simply not supposed to hurt or make you hoarse. Also think about at which times you're pushing your voice too hard and getting these vocal problems. We're gonna talk a bit about different environments later in the video. The next tip is to start recording yourself early on and make sure to keep your recordings as well. Since the development usually goes really slow, it's always good to have something old to compare with. Sometimes it feels like you're not getting better at all, but that's usually not the truth. It's also very interesting when you're a beginner to hear your own voice. You usually don't sound like you do in your head at all. But you have to consider that there's a big difference between having music behind the voice and not. All growls pretty much sound like shit when there's not music behind them. So don't become really sad if your growl sounds like crap when you don't have music. Try to find instrumental bits to put your voice over so you really hear what it sounds like with music. The next tip is one that will piss off some experts and vocal coaches for sure. Sing it like you mean it. For me, there are a few things as important as singing the stuff you sing like you mean it. By this I don't mean uncontrolled screams that strain your voice, but I do mean really pushing it to the max within the control technique. One way to do this is to write lyrics that you really mean and play music that you really stand behind. For me, the problem in this area is growling or screaming when I'm tired or unmotivated. That almost immediately means that I will push my voice and force it. This leads us right into the next tip. Know the difference between live studio and rehearsal space environments. Many of us, including me, do most of our extreme metal vocals in one environment. Some of us do a lot of home recordings, some of us go to a studio, some of us rehearse a lot, some of us are lucky enough to go on tour with a band. And the sound difference between these environments really are massive. It's very easy to damage your voice in a rehearsal or live environment where you don't really hear yourself in the same way. In a studio you can always have the playback from the earphones and you know what to expect. I would say get used to these environments early and how much you have to push to be heard. Usually when I do live gigs I'm pushing way too hard just because I don't think I'm coming through the wall of sound. And the sound on stage is of course something very different from what the audience is actually hearing. Get used to this early, as I said. It's a really good tip and it will really help you not damage your voice early on. Another good beginner tip is to do longer passages of extreme metal vocals right from the start. Many growlers do isolated screams and sing along to songs in the parts they like the most. I know I'm guilty of this too. The result is usually that your growls get good for singing something like the chorus of Ethan, but not the whole song. Try to refrain from this, because it will help your lungs a lot if you're used to singing the whole songs, including the boring parts. You can get by in the studio on lung capacity that isn't top notch, but live is a whole other thing. If you're used to doing full songs all the time, it will help you a lot to transition to playing live. It really is a lot easier to transition to growling when you do clean vocals or when you talk with a really strong, supported voice. I know many of us metal guys are as far from public speakers as they come, but this is a really important tip. I mean, I remember in my early days when I was growling, I was alone in my room and I hadn't said a thing to a person in like 2 or 3 hours. When you suddenly start screaming without support from nowhere, your voice will go out very fast. So it's a really good tip to be able to transition from the normal voice to the growling voice without it feeling uncomfortable or strange. Speaking of voice transitions and when to use your voice, my last tip is to take every opportunity to use and experiment with your voice. By this I mean participating in cover songs, doing cover songs. Choose unexpected songs that allow you to challenge yourself and do these different pitches and different powers and whatever. You can really discover things that you didn't know about your voice by doing this. Also, use and display your growling voice at parties and social settings and stuff like that. I know the old metal parties I used to go to, it was fully acceptable to stand by the computer and growl Bloodbath songs all night. I know this isn't really a solution for everyone, but I know metal parties was a big part of my evolution. Just becoming comfortable with screaming in front of people and knowing how my voice sounded like and getting feedback and hearing other people do it as well. It was really useful, I gotta say. Thanks for watching my extreme metal vocal video. I hope my tips were useful and unique enough for you guys to pick up something. I'm gonna put some song tips in the video description for a few common extreme metal vocal styles. These are just popular, simple songs. It's not really the best songs or anything like that, so don't comment telling me that Dismember isn't the best black metal band. I know that. Please subscribe if you liked the video and also comment if you have tried out these tips or if you think any of them are totally crazy. I'm also gonna put a few links to my bands in the video description if you wanna hear what I sound like. Thank you so much once again for watching the video. Until next time.